The show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com and by Liquid Learn at www.liquidlearn.com. Hi everyone, I am Rick Zanotti and welcome to our 9th episode of eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Today we've got, as always, our co-host, Terrence Wing. Hi Terrence, how are you?
Hey Rick, how are you? Hi everybody. I think I just lost audio just as you were saying that, so I'm assuming you just introduced me. And as always, let me get my administrative stuff out of the way. You can watch this show live at justin.tv/RelateCorp. You can also see it simulcast at the ISD 2.0 site on Facebook, and that would be facebook.com/ISD20. And also on the Liquid Learn site. So we're spreading our wings and simulcasting to more and more places. Also, if you want to participate, please join our chat room in Justin TV, or you can tweet us at eLearnChat or at the hashtag, at #eLearnChat, and we'll be monitoring all channels to see what your comments are. So restrooms are out the door and to the right, and Rick, I'll hand it over to you.
Or to the left, depending wherever you're standing.
That's
anyway,
right.
Today we have a special guest, Dan Pontefract from Vancouver, British Columbia, which is for all those who may not know, it's in beautiful Canada, and Vancouver is probably one of the prettiest places in the world. And Dan is joining us. His blog is Training Wreck. I'm going to bring that up right now, which is a great name for a blog. Got to ask you how you got that one. And before we lose him, here is Dan.
Great sound effect. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Terrence.
You're welcome.
How are you today, Dan?
I'm well. Thanks for the chance to hang out with you guys for a while here. I'm
no
looking
problem.
forward to it.
Well, same here. Now, Dan, you do a lot of work with, I'm going to bring up your blog again so people can see that again. Training Wreck, how'd you come up with that? That's a great name, by the way. How'd you come up with that one?
Yeah, it's obviously a tongue-in-cheek kind of answer here. To me, I think, the whole world of training needs to evolve, and as such, I'm not necessarily suggesting that the entire profession is a train wreck, but I believe that we need to evolve from what was referred to as training to certainly something more like a collaborative ecosystem of learning. And as such, I think a play on words here is that I kind of speak about the realities of that transformation, and hence trainingrec.com is a place where I can spout off every now and then.
It's a real good idea, and I don't disagree with you at all. I think the training industry is interesting. If you look at it, for the last almost 30 years, they keep saying e-learning is brand new. And they keep saying it's brand new. It's only been around 30 years. At one point or other, it's going to be kind of an established field. But I think it hasn't quite taken the route it could have. What do you think? And also, I want to ask you a little bit what you consider e-learning 2.0.
Well, now we're getting into the monikers of 2.0, and those of us that have issues with said monikers can get a handle here on in the tweets, or sorry, the chat stream. E-learning 2.0 to me is really just a sort of the evolution of where learning is going. So as much as we as society started putting E in front of everything, from performance to reading to learning, 2.0 to me is now sort of that next evolution. So here, when you think about e-learning 2.0, you've got one evolution after another evolution. So for me, learning was traditionally sort of in that classroom event. We added e-learning, which was then obviously the transition to having a lot of our materials available electronically. And now e-learning 2.0 to me is that next wave. That's, to me, how we might take sort of traditional formal learning and encapsulate that by the combination of informal and social learning. So in a nutshell, to me, anything with the E in front and then the 2.0 behind is sort of that next evolution to me, which is a collaborative learning environment that is part formal, part informal, and part social.
Yeah, makes sense. Terrence, anything going on in the chat room right now?
Nothing, no questions yet, but I definitely wanted to wish a happy holiday to Jeff, because apparently it is a holiday in Australia today. So, and Jeff is one of our regulars from the Down Under. So happy holidays to you folks in Australia. Hey, Dan, I have a question for you, though. You talk a lot about enterprise learning, and I've heard you speak on enterprise learning too. And Rick was asking me where you and I have met, and I'm thinking it was at the eLearning Guild, one of their DevLearn conferences. I'm thinking that's where it was, or it could have been ASTD. I'm not 100% sure. Uh, but I know you do a lot of talking on enterprise learning, and there's a lot of meta talk out there, and so many people catch on to these buzzwords and the definitions start to run amok and astray. And so that we're on the same page, how do you define Enterprise 2.0 or Learning 2.0?
All right, so I'll probably take both of those separately. It's a great question. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was eLearning Guild, to be honest, Terrence. And
Okay.
great to see you again. Hopefully you're in San Jose next week, actually.
I will be.
Oh, we're
Oh,
both going to be there. So are you going to be there?
Actually, we can share a brew.
That sounds good. And
Excellent.
if you drop by the Adobe booth, I'll actually be working in the Adobe booth. We're kind of guests for Adobe for the show. So
We're talking about tech knowledge for everybody listening. That's in San Jose next Tuesday, I believe it starts. Monday or Tuesday. I think the pre-conference
Tuesday, and then
is Monday.
the expo is Wednesday and Thursday.
Indeed. No plug here, but I'm down there speaking with David Mallon of Burson. So I have the chance to speak about sort of the evolution of learning to an audience as well.
No, plug away. People want to know where you are.
What's
Okay,
what's
so
your talk? What was the talk at ASTD Technology?
the ACD Technology talk is sort of the evolution of social learning at the company where I work, which is TELUS, is a Canadian telecom company up here.
Great.
Okay, so back to the question though, because I think it's important. To me, first of all, I think sort of collaborative-based learning is sort of three parts to a stool. One is I truly believe that organizations of any size really need to think through a better leadership model. And I'll come back to that in a second. But that's sort of one leg. Now, to your other question, Terrence, about the sort of Learning 2.0 and Enterprise 2.0, to me, Learning 2.0 is the evolution from training to collaborative-based learning. And collaborative-based learning can happen in a classroom, which I'll denote as formal learning. It could happen in an e-learning opportunity, which I'll also classify as formal. But I think it also is, as I mentioned earlier, really wrapped around now the recognition that informal and social learning are as much a part of that collaborative-based learning as anything. So in a nutshell, Learning 2.0 is formal, informal, and social, and we as learned learning professionals really need to wrap our heads around how we're going to educate our workforce, our organizations, our schools, our higher ed groups with the notion that we should apply a Learning 2.0 filter in everything that we do. This chat right here is as much about Learning 2.0 as anything. Now, the Enterprise 2.0 piece, again, for those who aren't familiar, really a term coined by Andy McAfee, now over at MIT. And to Andy at least, it's the use of social emergent software to allow a company to increase their performance, their connectivity, et cetera, inside of an organization. I'll take it one step further, and I'll call that collaboration. And what I mean by that is through social emergent software like this chat session right here, using things like wikis, blogs, microblogging, discussion forums, anything kind of 2.0-ish in technology nature, that to me is really the third leg of the stool. And if, as a learning professional, we're not thinking through those three legs of the stool, a leadership model that is much more transparent, affluent in terms of how one connects with other people, very communicative. Learning 2.0 is the use of formal and informal social practices, and as I say, Enterprise 2.0 or collaboration tools allow a lot of that to happen. So that's to me the three legs of the stool. Hopefully that definition helped a bit, Terrence.
Yeah, absolutely. There, with the Learning 2.0, would you say there has to be a technology element or not?
I would argue that there definitely has to be these days. And, I've got, I think, folks in disagreement with that particular statement. But you can't evolve the learning profession unless you also have very good acumen on the technology front. I mean, Terrence and Rick, this session today, we're using Skype, we're using all kinds of other back-end technologies. You've got a chat stream happening. People can like this in Facebook or Twitter with tweets. Like this is sort of your panacea example where I'm in Vancouver, you guys are in the States in California, and here we are having a chat.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for organizations that are 1,000 people in nature or 100,000. You do need this technology to connect people because so many more people are now working from home. They're having flexible work styles, working different types of shifts. They're in the field. And with a BlackBerry or an iPhone that has webcams in there, and you can actually take videos in the field of a customer site, or when maybe something technologically goes wrong, how can you not have technology in that equation of Learning 2.0?
No, that's true. And it's interesting because the chat so far, we have had guests in Canada with you. We've had people in Belgium, England, let's see, India.
Yeah.
So and everybody's just like we're here. It's actually pretty amazing if you think the strides we've made in the last 5 years alone in technology and getting everybody closer together. It's pretty mind-boggling, actually.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it also, I mean, I don't necessarily want to harp on the fact that there are budgetary constraints everywhere, but the fact of the matter is that I'll look at corporate just for a second here. The gravy train of, increasing learning and development budgets is yesterday's news. It's just not going to happen. So if we, again, as sort of those learning professionals, those pioneers, aren't using our intelligence and our technology acumen to find ways in which to infuse that into the learning model, then really you're left at the devices of the organization saying, okay, well, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that, I'm going to use this. And really, as sort of learned learning professionals, we're not in that mix. I think that's, obviously cause and pause for concern.
Well, one of the things that if you look at the learning industry, a lot of trainers hide. They don't want to get out there. They don't really want to be seen that much in the company. They do their job. They try to remain a little bit under the radar, get away from layoffs. Even CLOs many times aren't really out there, or they're reporting to the wrong people. All too often, CLOs either report to IT or to, even worse, accounting. And occasionally, they report to HR. It just really depends on how the organization is structured. Rarely do they report directly to upper management. So there's always that thing that training hasn't really been, at least in corporations and even in government, that aggressive in establishing that stake.
Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to answer that. So whether you're a trainer, whether you're a CLO, just generally I'll speak a broad stroke within the learning vertical itself. I don't personally care where it reports. I think that learning professionals, be it the executive or the trainers, and I'll being Canadian, I'll use a hockey analogy here. We got to stop playing goalie. We got to start playing more like Wayne Gretzky. And what I mean by that is, it's often, I think, just the DNA of the learning profession that we play defense or we're sort of stopping the puck, as opposed to what Gretzky used to do as sort of the penultimate hockey player of all time. He'd go to where the puck is and he'd think ahead and he'd be that visionary. And so, a lot of people forget that he has the most number of goals ever scored in a season with 92. Unheard of. But everyone thinks about him as the visionary and the playmaker. So he's actually both. He was there scoring goals, and I think that's where learning professionals need to get aggressive. And I think they need to start putting the puck in the net. As much as they need to be the visionary and assisting with the playmaking of where learning is going. And that means partnering with the CIO. That means partnering with the CFO. That means getting in there and saying, look, this is the strategy, this is the vision, this is where we should be going to get to that sort of collaborative ecosystem and back to the three legs of the stool I talked about.
We do have a question here. I think in part you might have answered this question from Leva, and it almost sounds like a question of culture. And when I say culture, not culture across geographic boundaries, but culture across different business structure. She's wondering she's having a challenge where her students are less likely or inhibited to share just for probably any number of reasons. And she's wondering what are some of the challenges with